Well, it's been a not so quiet week here at Lake Zombiegon. I guess it's been about 4 months now since folks have come on back from the dead and, gone about eating their friends and family. Well, just about anybody, really. I don't think there's really much of them being picky when the state that they're in. It's just how it works. But what's important now, and what we hear on the radio, and I'd say I have to agree, is keeping stock on what's left. We've got about, I'd say, a little upwards of a third of the town all hunkered down here. Of course, much of the rest are either walking about dead or been eaten or dead a second time. Circle life being what it is. Reminds me, never did get a chance to see that Lion King remake. Wasn't that I really wanted to, mind you, just thought came to mind. Right now, we've kind of settled ourselves, a family, into Floyd and Jesse's vacation home up there in the lake. We thought Floyd and Jesse had gotten themselves out right before all this turned out. It turns out that was not so much true. Saw them floating in the lake, kind of all bloated and pussy, like the time I found that cow when it drowned itself last summer when I was a kid. Nastiest thing I ever saw. Well, it used to be. Yeah, the sight of Floyd and Jesse walking that lake with the bloat and the pus and, well, all that one kind of took first place over the cow faster than, well, luckily it took them a bit to get themselves out of that muck as they kind of kept slipping back. Lake gets that tail end of fall with all the leaves as they sweep on up, mixing with the mud. And it mixes together into freezing cold, almost pasty glue-like substance. Yeah, we're famous for our lake in more ways than one. Winter's not coming in for a few months now, a month and a half, so we got our stock of food and wood, but you can never be too sure as this whole living dead situation has kind of turned folks around in terms of traditional thinking. It's not like you can stop by the general store and pick up a can or two of Spam if you have a need. Most stuff kind of got snatched up once word got out. Of course, it doesn't take much for folks around here to get a little nervous about things. One time word come down from Talbot, Mars was landing. Not Martians, Mars itself. So, So anyway, things are a bit different than what we're used to around here, but kind of oddly the same in some respects. We were at the weekly town meeting the other night. Well, we're still holding those. Things changed, but there's a certain mainstays you just don't do without. Otherwise, folks wouldn't know what to do with themselves. I mean, without the town meeting, where are you going to get the latest gossip? Am I right? Not to mention, it's always good to know who's got what in terms of guns, foods, and blankets, and everything else in case worse comes to worse. But despite all that's been occurring in our little town, we've always seen ourselves as cordial folks. I don't think we've had a robbery here in about 20 to 30 years. And that one was some initiation from a local college. Stole our prize moose head. But as I was saying, it's a cordial little town. This is despite the fact that nobody really likes each other. In a small town, there's always a reason to dislike somebody. In a big town, it's more of a general annoyance. Like somebody's playing their music too loud or someone's not wearing enough deodorant in the subway. But here, it's always more personal. Like, take, for instance, we get Roger Clements. Well, he was always friendly enough, except when it came to the ducks. Now, I just so happens we're famous for our ducks, like about a lot of other things. Well, not world famous, just local famous. We have our annual ice cream social, come each spring. We held down there by the lake. It was all a pretty favorite. We'd come in dressed in the best, and we'd sit on the shore eating our ice cream as the ducks come gliding in, the wings stretched out, the sun bouncing off the water as they touched down. It was something to see. Some kind of subliminal expression of natural beauty that's rare in this world of ours. On the flip side, that's about when we tend to see an upswing in bird feces. But if I were to put it to a vote, I think I can judge what most folks would cast their ballots. Except Roger. and everyone had a little grudge against him for that. You never out hated him, but he wasn't much of anyone's friend. Like I said, he wasn't a bad person, at least not to any people. But the ducks, he used to always run out there with a broom, screaming in this unruly way, and just chasing them ducks off the lake. Of course, he lived about as far away from the lake as anyone, so it never made much sense to be of any use why he would just chase those ducks off the lake. But, respect your neighbor and all that. And he never really hurt the ducks. But after he got himself bit, it was a different story. He stopped using the broom and started to just, well, gnaw on the ducks. He gnawed on them pretty good. I tell you, it didn't take long for a bunch of us to just load on up and get down there with the intent to send Roger to the promised land. I pretty much figured anyone might have done as one of them wouldn't count when it was your time. Kind of funny though. Watch folks going after them things that ate their own family, and they went after Roger with about twice as much fire, literally and figuratively. Guess we all just saw something in those ducks that we didn't see in the people of our own lives. Well, there we were, all snuggled up, waiting for the winter to come along and make us even more miserable and depressed than we already were. When it occurred to us we didn't have any cards. Well, this is usually the job of my oldest, taking care of the amusement part of the trips, but I suppose in his excitement, if that's what you want to call it, all of it all, he really didn't consider the whole thing to be a trip. And truth be told, I didn't, exactly consider it to be one myself, unless one thinks of the whole thing to be like the first rest stop on a one-way trip to hell. But then again, our family was comprised of various denominations, so we really couldn't agree on what hell actually was, or whether or not there even was one. But that's a discussion for another time, I think. Probably about 10 seconds from about to be consumed alive by a pack of the fellas. So, there we were, cold, scared, not so much hungry as we had ourselves a pretty big lunch, as we raided the Happy Hippo a few hours before. Got our hands on a big batch of pancake batter. And that started to remind me of when I was a kid. Every Sunday morning, the family and I would sit down to a nice big batch of maple syrup soaked, butter piled high, fluffy buttermilk pancake. We would just sit ourselves down right there in the back. So we just sat ourselves down right there in the back. Of course, after having barricaded the doors nice and tight, in case any unwanted visitors, human or otherwise, were to come on by. And we just had ourselves a nice pancake breakfast. Well, there wasn't any butter. The only syrup we could find was blueberry. But the general idea was there. The idea of family. And no matter how bad things got, you always had those pancake breakfasts. We only made about, I think, 6 pancakes or so. They were pretty big ones. And like I said, it was the idea that was the most important thing. Keep in mind, this is all before we started holding the town meeting once again, making our way up that long road back to a normal everyday life. One that was before all this dead relatives coming to the house uninvited stuff. I mean, at least when they're alive, you could always plan not to be home. Not so much when they're dead. You could shoot them, that was good. But you had to keep in mind you had only so many bullets on hand. Well, I mean, we all had our fair share of ammunition in our little town, as hunting was always considered to be one of the more important pastimes to many of especially to a few of our more liberal-minded folks. Well, I'm not talking about the Democrats. I'm talking about the ones who like to shoot things a lot. They were the ones who had a lot of bullets. Oddly enough, those were the ones that seemed to run out of bullets first. Most likely because, as I noted, they used them quicker than most. Turns out being a liberal, no matter how you define it, didn't turn out so well for people in our neck of the woods. But there we were, back at Floyd and Jesse's, or at least what used to be theirs. I suppose you could call it ours now. The Lord knows what happened to our place. Probably should go back and check it out, depending on what the external factors, being what they are and all. Point being, although we knew this whole situation wasn't what you would call a passing fancy, we were going to have to make do. And that meant we were going to have to find ourselves a nice deck of playing cards. I'm talking about your regular 52 card deck, not Pinochle. Never much took to that game.